Section 28 to divide the assembly. So the purpose of this is to verify the vote taken on a question or to secure a more accurate count of the vote. It is very important to verify the vote and also to secure the vote.
So the procedure. Without waiting for recognition, the proposer will say, Mr. Chairman, I call for division, or Mr. Chairman, I doubt the vote. After that, without waiting for a second, the chair will say, division has been called. Are you ready for the question? Then, then stated the question. So those in favor of the motion, please rise or raise the right hands. The chair will count the votes, and then after that, the chair will say be seated or hands down. After that, the chair will say those opposed, please do the same, then counts the votes, then the chairman will say be seated or hands down. After counting, the chair will announce the result and he will say there are 37 votes in favor and 33 against, so the motion is carried. Or he will say there are 33 votes in favor and 37 votes against, so the motion is lost. The purpose of the motion to divide the assembly is to have a new vote taken on the pending question, just like the motion to reconsider. The difference is that the purpose of the motion to divide the assembly is merely to ascertain whether the chair was correct in determining the results of the vote, while that of the motion to reconsider is to find out if some members have changed their stand on questions after it has been rediscussed. The call for division should be made immediately after the results of the vote have been announced. But if there is a doubt on the results, a division of the assembly may be called for any member who doubts the vote as announced by the chair, or the chair himself doubted the result. He may order a recount. So after the call for division is made, the chair should proceed to take another vote on the question, this time by adopting a more accurate method of counting the votes. Though it is not necessary, however, that an actual count be made if it is evident that either the affirmative or the negative has a distinct preponderance of votes. If the member calling for division desires to have the votes on each side counted and not merely estimated, or if he wishes to have the vote taken by roll call or by ballot, his request should be made in the form of a motion which is treated as incidental to the main question. It must be seconded, but it cannot be debated upon. And also it requires majority vote. But when different methods of taking the vote are suggested, they should not be treated as amendments but like filling in blanks. Effects of a division of the assembly are: first, after a recount, the result of the vote becomes the final decision of the assembly on the question at issue. Then second, a call for division cannot be renewed after it has been reasonably denied. So these are the basic rules governing the division of the assembly. First, a call for division may be made even if someone has the floor. Second, it requires no second. Third, it is not debatable. Fourth, it cannot be amended. Fifth, it requires no vote. Sixth, a vote on it cannot be reconsidered if it is stated as a motion. Seventh, it takes precedence only over the question under which it arises. 8. It yields to all privileged motions. 9. It applies to votes on all questions. And lastly, it can have no other motion applied to it except to withdraw. Section 29 to divide the question. The purpose of this is to divide long and complicated proposition into separate and distinct parts to facilitate their consideration. So it is a request by a member so that the parts may be voted separately. So the procedure. Assume that the following question has just been introduced, that the organization offered to clean the city park in connection with the JC cleanup drive and that is offered to plant trees on J. Abad Santos Avenue as its contribution to the Lions Club City Beautification Campaign. So without waiting for recognition, the proposer will say, Mr. Chairman, I request that the motion just proposed be divided into two parts. First, a motion that we offer to clean the city park in connection with the JC cleanup drive, and second, that we offer to plant trees on J. Abad Santos Avenue as our contribution to the Lions Club City Beautification Campaign. So after the proposer will say those phrases, without waiting for a second, the chair will say, it is requested that the motion before the assembly be divided into two parts. Then restate how division is proposed to be done. Then, if there is no objection, the request is granted. The question now before the assembly is that the chair will restate the first part of the main motion. After that, the chair will say, is there any discussion? If an objection is raised, the chair immediately puts the request to a vote without debate as follows. There being an objection, the request will be put to a vote. Are you ready for the question? Then the chair will state the question. So, those in favor of dividing the question say A. Then to those opposed, say no. After counting, the chair will say the motion is carried or the motion is lost. When bringing long and complicated questions before the assembly for consideration, it is best to divide them up into separate portions. Why? So that they are more understandable and their consideration may be completed more quickly. The division of question, as a rule, it is proposed or stated as a request and it is granted by general consent. Always remember that only main motions and amendments can be divided by a motion to divide the question if the question has several parts relating to a common subject and each portion can stand alone as a full proposition if the other part or parts are removed. When the question is divided, each of its component part is considered and voted upon separately, the same as if each part has been offered individually. The request or motion must indicate how the question will be divided in a clear and concise manner. Several proposals may be offered on how to divide a question, but these are not recognized as amendments, but rather as alternative propositions that must be evaluated and voted on one by one. The question should not be divided if it is about resolution and contains several separate propositions or recommendations, but they are presented in such a way that they cannot be divided without being rewritten or recast. Similarly, no question should be split if it contains several distinct propositions, none of which should be adopted if the other component portions are rejected. Consideration by paragraph or seriatim is when an elaborate proposition is presented for consideration, such as a series of resolutions in a common subject or a set of laws with parts that are intimately connected to one another. It is generally preferable to consider the question by paragraph or seriatim, even if it is capable of being divided. The consideration of a question by paragraph or seriatim may be initiated by the chair or by any member through an appropriate motion, which shall be governed by the rules of a main motion. So, when questions are considered by paragraph or seriatim, the presiding officer usually requests that the secretary or another member read the first portion or paragraph of the proposition, then calls for a debate on it, and then for amendments. No vote is taken until afterwards. If no more amendments are proposed, the following sections or paragraphs are read, debated, and voted on. After all the amendments have been read and examined separately, the presiding officer requests that the entire proposition be amended further. At this point, changes to the original provisions or the addition of new ones may be made. If no other changes are offered, the chair puts the complete propositions as revised to the assembly for a vote. These are the effects when to divide a question. First, if the request is granted or a motion to the effect is carried, the chair submits the question to the assembly in the manner it has been divided. Second, if the request or motion is rejected, it is as if no such request or motion has been made, and the same cannot be renewed on the same proposition unless it was previously withdrawn. Next, the basic rules governing the division of question. First, a question or motion to divide the question cannot be made while someone has the floor. Second, if made as request, it requires no second. If stated as a motion, it must be seconded. Third, it is not debatable. Fourth, it may be amended, but the amendments are restricted to the manner of dividing the question and are treated as a filling blanks. Fifth, as a request, it is granted by general consent. If the request is objected to or if it is stated as a motion, it requires a majority vote. Sixth, a vote on it cannot be reconsidered. Seventh, it takes precedence only over the question under which it arises and the motion to postpone indefinitely. Eighth, it yields to all privileged, appropriate incidental and subsidiary motions, except to amend and to postpone indefinitely. Ninth, it applies to main motion, amendments, and committee recommendations. And last, as a request, it is subject to the application of no other motion except to withdraw. As a motion, it is governed by the rules of a main motion.